I'm Luke Sinnott. I'm a former captain in the army. I was injured in Afghanistan in 2010. I'm a GB athlete competing in long jump, training to get to the Paralympics in 2020.
People across the UK rely on prosthetics every day to walk, to run, to live. Luke Sinnott is just one of many who has lost limbs.
Our job was to find and get rid of IEDs in Afghanistan, part of what was known as the Counter IED Task Force. On an approach down for about the fifth time that we walked down this track to deal with it, another IED functioned under me, just one that hadn't been found. Massive explosion, and the world just goes dark.
In the UK, each year around 5,000 people have one or both of their legs amputated. It's obviously going to be life-changing, but I wanted to find out the reality of living life as an amputee. Luke chose to channel his energy into sport, and it helped fuel his recovery.
I started off in sailing, Paralympic sailing, and I was doing well. I was doing that for about 4 years, but unfortunately we weren't getting to where we wanted to be, and we had to step out. And so I took about 4 or 5 months to look around again, and I landed on athletics. I tried prosthetic leg running and it was hard, and I appreciate it was going to be hard, but long jump we didn't really have anyone, so I went forward for that. Yeah, I thought I'd fill that gap and managed to get myself to the number 4 in the world.
But getting there wasn't easy. After spending 9 weeks in hospital, Luke took the first step onto a long road to recovery.
Learning to walk again is going to be one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life. So when I turned up to Headley Court, day one, moment one was straight in the gym. They had me doing working out, getting strong, and considering 9 weeks in a hospital bed, you know, one press up was quite an achievement for me. And I remember within about 3 weeks of being at Headley Court, I stood up for the first time in prosthetic legs they made for me. It was painful, it was uncomfortable, but it felt fantastic, and once you get hold of that, you just want to keep going with it.
Prices for prosthetics from private companies can range from £1,000 to over £25,000, depending on patient requirements. A state-of-the-art prosthetic with a custom-built microprocessor can cost just over £50,000. Obviously, for many, this simply isn't a realistic option. Their only other choice is to turn to the NHS. Often their prosthetics can be ill-fitting and uncomfortable, and patients have to experience a painstaking process going back and forth. I'm here to see Kevin Aurora, a physiotherapist who helps people to recover and live a more active life after amputation.
With NHS, it's a bit slow protocol, as we all are aware that it takes time. So they have to try a few stumps before an actual one fits in and they start liking that. Now this guy which I'm seeing has been given, I think, 5th stump, because few of them in the past have given him, some of them gave him necrosis because they were too tight, some of them were not just comfortable, so this is the 5th stump which he feels is better. But then the duration of change from one to another, or to get the best one, it took him like 8 to 9 months for that. Going to a private hospital in England, I would say it's 5 more times costly than NHS, and the person has to fund, so people try to just wait and slog on NHS system to get one done. Yeah, prostheses are also evolving. Before they used to be not very comfortable, they never used to have a cushiony base on it, and the material used to be really heavy. It takes time to get confident on it, and they fall on it sometimes, they forget about they have one. So it's just about training the body again for a new life.
Luke's experience getting medical care was better than most due to him being a former serviceman. However, he understands the difficulties surrounding the accessibility of prosthetic limbs for those less fortunate than himself.
You know, one of my legs that I got through the military, an X3, would probably wipe out the budget for an NHS prosthetic department, which is no good. You know, you can't do that, and I know. You know, there's always an issue on the NHS for funding. Luckily for the military guys, we have a fund out there that we can access. What's a shame really is that on the NHS is they can't be keeping up with the technology for the military patients and the NHS patients, so they have to they have to make do with what they can afford, and that can cause some issues, especially when the military guys are walking in on the latest stuff and they're expecting to keep up with technology. Losing your limbs and being stuck in a wheelchair, there's nothing worse, because it's not like you can't walk, you just haven't got the limbs to walk, and that's frustrating, because my hat is off to anyone who has to live in a wheelchair, because it is hard work in a wheelchair.
But prosthetics are improving. Technologies such as 3D printing are enabling manufacturers to produce bespoke prosthetics for patients at a lower cost. I went to Dorset Orthopedics, where they created the first commercially available artificial limbs built in a 3D printer. I wanted to understand, how close is this technology to becoming a commonplace solution?
There will become a time, I am sure, where somebody comes into a clinic and you will literally scan their residual limb with your mobile phone or some kind of device, and then go to the computer to modify that, and then send it to a carver or the 3D printer for that socket to be printed. As a company, we are just now investing and involving ourselves in that, because at the moment we still feel we can do things quicker and better, the old-fashioned way, if you like, 3D printing, as a way of bringing costs down and other things. But we provided the first commercially available one. They've been making limbs and testing arms for a little while now, but the first commercially delivered one was this week, end of last week, and that was delivered by us. So that was a pair of below elbow myoelectric arms.
Whilst technology is improving and life can somewhat return to normality, the mental toll of limb loss can still weigh heavy on patients. It's vital that we provide stable support networks so that people can live a life after limbs.
When there's any arguments about funding of prosthetics, if you don't give that person a leg, they will not go back to work, they will not become a taxpayer, they will not become a member of society. You put a prosthetic limb on someone and a pair of trousers, you wouldn't even know, and they'll be there. I've seen them all over the place. I've seen them working as ambulance crew, I've seen them in offices, I've seen them working on construction sites. Put a prosthetic leg on someone and they can function fully. If you don't give it to them, then you're pretty much throwing away a person.